Hi guys, welcome to Mr. Cloudbook channel. In this particular video, we are going to discuss about how to provision an EKS cluster on our AWS using the Terraform. Okay, so I am going to explain everything from the scratch, and we are going to use the default VPC for this particular provisioning of EKS. Okay, first of all, go to AWS console and create an IAM user. So we need the access key and secret access key for our configuration. Okay, so let's go to the AWS console, and in the search bar, search for IAM and click on enter. And you can see here in the left side panel you have to click on users and create a user. So let's create a username. So for EKS, right, I'm just providing the name as EKS here and provide the access, and I want to create an IAM user. So auto generated password is enough. Click on next and attach policies directly and use the administrator access. Okay, for the learning purpose you have to open the administrator access. If you want to create an EKS, and you have to go with the EC2 full access and EKS full access also. Okay, and just click on next and you have to click on create user, and you can see our user is created here. And let's continue. I don't want to download that one, and this is the user we created, right? EKS. Just click on this one and you have to click on the security credentials and you have to create an access keys here. Okay, so let's create access key and CLI. We are using for CLI, right? And I understand you have to agree these terms and click on next. And if you want to provide any tag value, you can provide. I'm not providing anything here, and just click on create access key, and it will create an access key and secret access key, and you can download this particular file. Okay, so I am going to delete this one, however, that's why I'm not downloading this file. So let's open our services in a new tab. Just right click and open a link in a new tab, and you can come here. So let's open our elastic Kubernetes service also. Okay, and you can see this is our EKS cluster, right? If you want to create any cluster, you have to click on add cluster here, and you have to click on create, and you have to provide your name and version and everything, right? So you have to create a role for this particular EKS. Okay, so you have to click on here and it will provide a new tab. Okay, so how to create an EKS cluster and everything. So we are going to do this from the Terraform now. Okay, so let's go open this one and a new tab. Okay, you have to open a new tab and search for the EKS cluster data resource Terraform. Okay, and enter. And you can see you have to select this particular resources. Okay, so select the resources, not data. Okay, so select the resources. You have to create a separate folder for this particular EKS. I already have that one. Okay, you can see here I already opened my Visual Studio Code also in that particular folder. So that is named EKS. This is my folder name EKS. Okay, so let's create a file. So what are our files requirement? Main.tf file is required for our creation of or provision of any EKS cluster or anything from our AWS, and we need the provider.tf also, provider.tf, and these are the two files we need. Okay, I'm not going to make this one complex. Okay, everyone, even the beginner, can understand this particular EKS cluster. Okay, so go back here and open a new tab and search for the provider.tf here, provider.tf Terraform AWS. You have to just click on that one. You have to see this. So in the first result you have to click on AWS provider here. So let's copy this particular one. Okay, all you have to do is just copy this one up to here, up to provider. Just right click and copy it and come back to Visual Studio Code and select the provider.tf file and paste the content that you copied, and you have to change your region here. Okay, let me change to AP South one. Okay, so I'm going to use the Mumbai region. So that is AP-South-1 here, and let's save this one. Okay, and you have to close this one. Okay, so we don't need anymore. Okay, so this will use this particular provider AWS, and that will go to this particular region AP South-1, and it will provision our EKS cluster in the AP South-1, I mean Mumbai region. Okay, so let's close this one, and we need the only main.tf file. Okay, so let's close this one also. We don't need any more this. Let's close this provider.tf. So you can see here for the Amazon EKS cluster we need the particular role, I mean service role for our EKS. Okay, so if you click here Amazon EKS user guide, you will open a new tab. So we have to create an EKS cluster role here. Okay, so this is the trusted policy we have to attach to our EKS role. Okay, So if you click on here on the console AWM, it will open a new tab for our IAM role creation. Okay, so let's go and do that one manually. I will go explain manually and with the Terraform also. Okay, so no need to worry about that. You have to just to know how to create an IAM role. Okay, so you can see here I don't have any roles here. I have just 2 roles. So let's in the left side panel click on roles here, and you have to click on create role and just select the AWS service, and in the service user case you have to select the EKS. Okay, let me set it for EKS here, and you have to select the EKS here, and you have to select this particular EKS cluster. Okay, so you have to click on next. You can see it, we have only one policy. Okay, we have to add this particular policy. In order to create this particular role, you have to come to AWS EKS cluster role resource. We already opened a new tab, right? So you can come down here. So this is the example IAM role for our EKS cluster. Okay, so let's copy this particular role. Okay, I will explain everything, and just try copy it and come back to your main.tf file. So first we need the role in order to create an EKS cluster. Okay, let's see what is this particular data IAM policy attachment for the EKS server. So this is the policy you can see here. So this is the same thing we are using. So you can see version and the statement and allow principal and AKS amazon.com service. So the same thing you have to add it here. Okay, you can see the principal and the service, and you can see the statement and everything is same. Okay, so it will automatically add that particular policy. Okay, this is the AKS policy. Okay, updated policy, and we added that here. And so resource, what is the IAM role? So what is the name you want for this particular role? You can change the name here also. EKS cluster example. So let me write this one as a cloud. Okay, so assume role policy. So this what is where we get this particular policy. We will get this particular policy from here. Okay, so you can see here AWS IAM policy document. This is the policy document, and we are using the data here, data block. Okay, that's why data dot AWS IAM policy dot assume role dot JSON. So our policies are in JSON format. That's why we are using the .json. So we need to attach IAM policy. Okay, and this is the policy we are adding. You can see this is the policy name, Amazon EKS cluster policy. If you go back here and role section, you can see this is the policy we are using. Just click on here, and you can see the policy management, what it will do and everything. Okay, and you can see you have to just copy this particular ARN. Okay, so let's copy this one. So ARN is copied, and you have to let me open a new space here and let me show that one. So we already added, but you can see we are getting the same policy. Okay, so that is the ARN we are using here. Okay, so let me delete that one. So we are adding the Amazon EKS cluster policy. I mean, what is this role name? Okay, so if you get the question, so it will add this particular EKS cluster cloud. So we are creating a role, but we are not adding any attachments, right? In order to add this particular policy that we are creating to this particular user, so we need to provide this particular role, and we are calling it from here AWS IAM role dot example dot name. So you can see name. So we are calling this particular name. So this particular Amazon EKS cluster policy will attach to this particular role. So what is our role name? EKS cluster and cloud. Okay, so this is how you have to create an IAM role for your particular cluster. Okay, so let's go back here and let me close this one. We don't need this anymore, and leave, and you have to close this one also. Okay, so you can see we already created a role, and next you can see we need to provide the cluster name. So when we have to provide the Kubernetes version also if you want, but we are not providing anything because it will automatically take the latest version of 1.28. Okay, so you can see here, and nothing we are changing here. We are just providing the name, and we are adding the role. So we already created a role here. You can see this is the role we are created from our AWS resource EKS, and you can see resource role here, and let me copy this one. Okay, up to here, and let me copy it here and paste it here, and let me save it here. So this will provision a cluster. You can see our resource. We are using the resource to create an AWS EKS cluster with the name of example. So I'm going with the same resources. I'm not changing anything. You can directly change your cluster name here. Okay, so let me change the name here. So what is the name you want? I just want EKS cloud here. Okay, so I want the name as EKS cloud, and let me close this one. I am not using this particular subnets present now, so let me clear this one, and you can see you will get this particular error. Okay, so for the role ARN and everything, because we need the VPC config, you can see too few blocks specified for VPC config, at least one blocks are specified, so we need the VPC here. Okay, so in order to use your original, I mean your default VPC, you have to provide like this. Okay, after the policy attachment, let's use a get VPC data. So we are getting our VPC data from here. Let's provide data. So I am calling our data, okay, from here. So AWS underscore VPC and brackets, let's open a default. So we need the default one, right? That's why I'm providing the default here, and let's open a new bracket, and let's call your by providing the default is equals to true. You have to provide like this, and this will collect your existing default VPC details. Okay, so we need the public subnets also, so let's get those also. Let's get public subnets for our, and enter. You can see we are getting the public subnets. Let's call it from the data, sorry, so let's write the data space, and within the brackets we have to call AWS underscore subnets here, and it will call the subnets, and we do just need the public one only, so just provide the public here and open a new bracket here, and let's filter it. So we need the we have to filter those. Okay, why we are using the filter means it will collect both the private and public subnets, but we need only private one. Okay, so let's provide the name equals to, so we are using this particular VPC. Okay, so this VPC, right? So that's why I'm using this particular VPC ID, so it will automatically call your VPC ID. Okay, so what is your VPC ID and everything from here, so from this particular data. Okay, so after the name you have to provide the values. Okay, so just select the values here, and we have to use the string, and where we need to get the values, so you have to get these values from here, right? So let's provide here, come here, and you have to provide the data dot AWS VPC, AWS underscore VPC, and you have to select the default dot ID, and let's save this one. Okay, so if you get the doubt again, let me explain clearly. So particular this data, so this data block will get this particular AWS VPC, so it will search for the default your VPC in your particular AP South one. Okay, so it will using this particular default one is equals to true, means we are setting okay, use this particular VPC only default one, it will collect the data from this particular default VPC. So this data block will get your particular VPC that you are present in your region, so it will get only the default VPC complete data. Okay, so next we need the data public subnets in order to create your cluster. Okay, so data, so we are again using the data block to get your AWS subnets, so it will grab your every subnets. Okay, so we are just providing the name block here as a public, and for the filter we are using the name, so we are using the this particular VPC ID and the values. So for the values we are using this particular data from here, so use this particular VPC data, and just I need the public subnets from that particular VPC. So this is the public data subnet. Okay, this particular block will get the public subnet data from your VPC. Okay, so let's use those public subnets for our EKS cluster creation. Okay, so that is done. You have to provide VPC config here to not getting any error. Let's create that one. So in the VPC config you have to use the subnet underscore IDs here. Okay, so this is the subnet ID underscore IDs, and we are going to get the public subnets from where we are getting data, and this is the data, right? It will get the public subnets. Okay, So let's copy that one, data dot AWS underscore subnets, and you have to select this one. So this is the public subnet we are getting from here. So this is the data, we are using a data here, and subnets here, this is the AWS subnets, and this is the public, and this is the public. So it will get the public subnet IDs from this data, okay, from your default public subnets data, okay. So you have to provide the dot IDs here, okay, dot IDs, okay. So this is how you have to provide to get your public subnets, public subnets, to create your EKS cluster role, okay. So this is done. Let me close this one, okay. You can see, so it will depends on this particular cluster creation, will depends on this particular role. So whenever we create a cluster, we need a IAM role, so that's why we are depending on that particular IAM role. So whenever the IAM role is present, then only create an EKS cluster, otherwise wait till this particular cluster role will create, up to our cluster role create. So you can see, so this is the cluster role we are creating, okay. Let's close this one. So let's open a terminal and let's see whether we are getting the EKS cluster or not. So before that, you have to provide an AWS configure, okay. So let's do that, okay. So if you provide AWS configure, enter, and you have to provide your access keys and secret access key that you generated last time, okay. So this is the access key and secret access key. Let's copy this access key and come here, and let me paste it here and enter. And you have to copy this particular secret access key and you have to paste it here and enter. Use the AP South one, okay. So JSON format, that is also okay. So and it's created, and first we need to provide the Terraform init. So it will initialize your backend, it will download every dependency from the AWS in order to provision your resources in your AWS, okay. So we are just now creating the EKS cluster only with the IAM role of EKS cluster policy. You can see here, let me close this one once. First it will create an IAM role, then it will collect the data of your default VPC, and it will collect the public subnet data also, and then only it will create the EKS cluster with the name EKS cloud, and it will using the public subnets that we are getting from this particular data, okay. And it will depends upon the particular Amazon EKS cluster, okay. So it will depend on this one, okay. Then only our cluster will create. It's successfully initialized. Let's clear the screen, and you have to provide the Terraform validate to see the syntax is working fine or not of our Terraform file, okay. If you provide Terraform validate, it will check and everything, and if you provide any error, you will get error here only, okay. And you can see the configuration is valid. So let's provide the Terraform plan to see what it's creating, okay. So Terraform plan and enter. So let's increase this one. And you don't know how to install a Terraform locally, I already made a dedicated video on that one. So I will provide the link in the description. You can watch that video and you can do the Jenkins provisioning from that one video, and after that you can watch this particular EKS cluster also. You can see here, and first it will creating the it's providing like it's creating a cluster, okay. So you can see it's the name of the cluster is EKS cloud, and you can see it's creating an IAM role, okay. You can see force detach policies and everything. It's just creating the name as EKS cluster cloud, and it's attaching your cloud role to EKS cluster cloud, okay. So it's attaching your policy to this particular EKS cloud cluster. You can see here, this is the role it's using, okay. So let's clear the screen, and you have to provide the Terraform apply and enter, and you have to provide the action as here and enter, and it will take minimum 10 to 15 minutes to create an EKS cluster, okay. So maximum it will take 10 minutes. You can see it's first creating the IAM role, okay. So we need the IAM role, so that's why it's creating the first IAM role, and it attaching the some policies, and after that it's creating the cluster, okay. And whenever you have any existing roles for this particular EKS, you have to delete those roles, okay. So otherwise you will get the conflict error, okay. So that's why you have to delete the existing roles that you have on this particular EKS role or EKS node group and anything, okay. Just remove those, and you have to run this particular EKS cluster from the Terraform, okay. So meanwhile it's creating, let's discuss about the AKS cluster node policy also. I mean how to create a node group and everything. Okay, so for the cluster we need the node group. Okay, so let's open a new tab and you have to search for the EKS cluster node group and you have to click on enter and you will get the EKS node group resources here. We have to click on here, so you can see, so example usage. Okay, this is the example usage we are going to use, but I'm not using this one. Okay, first of all we need the IAM roles. Even the node group requires the IAM role also. Okay, so let's copy that one from here. So this is the example IAM role we are using for the EKS node group. Okay, so let's copy this and I will explain over there. Right click and copy it here. Okay, so let's create an empty file. Okay, let's make it as a main.txt and enter, and it will take some time to create your EKS cluster. Okay, that's why I'm explaining your node group creation also. Let's paste that one and enter and save it once, and you can see where did you get this particular resource. Okay, if you get the doubt, you have to wait till the cluster creation. Okay, so we are using the EC2 service. So okay, so we are using the EC2 service policy. So these are the policies we have to attach to our node group. Okay, so it requires Amazon EKS worker node policy attachment, and it requires Amazon EKS CNI policy, and it requires Amazon EC2 container register read only. So these three policies you have to attach to your node group role, IAM role. Okay, so this will create an IAM role for our node group. Okay, so if you want to provide the node group name, so let's provide as a cloud here. Okay, with the name as a cloud and save it here, and it will create the node. Okay, so let's come back and let's create the node group from here. So everything you can use these resources only to create anything. Okay, so let's copy this resource and everything from up to depends on. Okay, till the end you have to copy that one and you have to paste after this one. Okay, let's paste it here, and you can see let me make it a comment here, you can easily understand. Create node group, and you can see this is the resource we are using. So to create an AWS EKS node group, so and you can see here it's completed almost after 7 minutes 12 seconds. Okay, so let's go back to my AWS console and let's see whether it's created or not. And you can see here on the click on clusters, and you have to refresh this one, and you can see I provided a name as EKS cloud here, and if you click on here, and you can see it's automatically taking the 1.28, and you can see created 8 minutes ago. And we, in order to create a node group, you have to click on compute and you have to click on add node group, and we need the node group name. Okay, that's why we are providing the node group name, and we need the IAM role, you can see here. So that's why we are creating the IAM role, and you have to click on next and everything from the here next. Okay, so let's copy this role. Okay, so let's copy this complete txt file that we are using and delete that file, we don't need anymore. So let's add here. Okay, let me close this once. So come here and paste the code that you copied. Okay, so this is the code we are using now. So first we will create the IAM node group role. Okay, so where this will get, you will get this from here. Okay, you can see if you click on this particular IAM console, and you can see we already have this EKS cluster cloud, but because we are created using this from Terraform, right? So let's click on create role, and you have to select the AWS service, and use case you have to select the EC2, and you have to click on next, and you have to use some permission policies, right? What we are going to attach, so we are going to attach the CNI policy. You have to search for CNI and you have to add this one. If you click on this one, you will get the ARN. Okay, so the same ARN we are using inside our policy attachment. Okay, and this is the ARN. Let's copy it and let me show one only. So I want to show where we are getting these ARNs. Okay, and if you paste it here, this is the same IRN policy we are using. Let's tab, and you can see we are using the same policy. Okay, so these both are same. Okay, ARN IAM and everything same. Okay, so we are getting these policies from there. Okay, so where we are getting the ARN means you have to go there and you have to copy that particular ARNs and you have to add it here. And for the IAM role, to where we have to attach these policies, you have to add these policies to this particular role. Okay, so AWS IAM role dot example dot name, you have to add this particular name. Okay, so it will add these three policies, and next we are going to create the cluster node group. Okay, so cluster name, where we are getting the cluster name, so you can see AWS EKS cluster. If you go up here and you can see here we are getting the cluster name from here, AWS EKS cluster dot example dot name, you have to provide like that. And you can see here AWS cluster example dot name, so we are getting that name. You have to provide the node group name, so I provided the node cloud and node ARN, we have to provide the ARN from here. Okay, so from AWS IAM example dot AWS IAM role dot example dot ARN, so it will attach this particular role to our node group. Okay, and let me delete this AWS subnets. Okay, I don't want this, and we need to attach our own subnets that we are getting from our data. So let's provide like this subnet underscore IDs. You have to use the data dot AWS subnets dot ipublic, you have to use this one dot IDs. So we are getting the public subnet from our data, right? That's why we are using the data and AWS subnets and public IDs. So this particular EKS node group will use this public subnets to create the cluster. This subnet IDs will use the data from here. Okay, you can see we are already collecting the data from here, right? So to get the public subnets, so it will use those public subnets to create your cluster node group EC2 instance. Okay. So for the scaling config, I am using the max size equals to 2 and minimum size equals to 1. So I am not using any more than that. And if you want to provide the 2 instances desired, it will create the 2 instance, but I am going with the 1. So whenever the CPU usage increases more than 80%, it will automatically increase the another instance. Okay. So whenever the CPU usage decreases below the 80%, it will reduce it to your minimum size is 1. Okay. And I don't want this also. Okay, so for the basic we don't need this. And for the instance role, I mean instance types, you have to use the instance type, otherwise it will create an T2 medium, T3 medium instance for our node group. Okay, so but we need just enough for the T2 micro is enough for our instance type for our node group. Okay, and it will automatically depends on these policies. Okay, so these three policies, whenever these three policies is created, then only our node group will be created. Okay, so you have to save it here and you have to come up again and go to the terminal here, and you have to provide the Terraform validate and enter, and you can see, so AWS IAM role, we are getting the error, right? Let's see the error. So at the line of 51, and you can see come here, so this is the error we are getting. So you have to use the name, I mean name, it's already taken from here. I think we provided a name here, and you can see, so we are using the name at the IAM role for our cluster, but node group also we are using the same name. Okay, that's why we are getting the error. So let's make it to 1. Okay, and you have to use the 1 here also. Okay, role example 1 dot name, so and save, and you have to use the, otherwise it will add to our main row. I mean it will, these policies will add to our particular cluster group. Okay, use this particular AWS IAM role dot example 1, so we are getting the example 1, so it then only these three policies will attach this to this particular role. Okay, so otherwise it will add to this role. Okay, otherwise those roles are added to this particular example. Okay, so I am using just example same, right? So that's why I am providing this example 1. Okay, so these three policies will attach to this role. So that is done. You have to use the example 1 here. Okay, so example 1 dot ARN, for the node group also it will attach this particular cluster role. So but we need the this role. Okay, so that is done, and let's save this, and you have to increase this one, and if you provide the Terraform validate again, and you can see our configuration is valid and succeeded. Okay, so let me clear the screen, and you have to create the Terraform. You have to provide the Terraform plan here and enter, and you can see it's refreshing everything and it's creating the file to add. Okay, so let's apply this. So let me apply first and let me explain. It will create an IAM role with the CNI policy and worker node policy and container register read policy, and you can see it will create an IAM role and it will create a node group with the T2 micro instance type. Okay, and it's using the public subnets from our AP South one, and it's setting the scaling config to 1 to 1. So desired is 1 and maximum is 2 and minimum is 1, and it will refresh the our cluster group. Just apply. So it will create IAM role and it will create the node group only. Okay, and you have to provide us here and enter. So you can see here it's creating the IAM role first because we use it depends on, right? So our node group will depends on this particular IAM role. That's why it's creating the IAM role first, and then after that it's creating the node group. You can see here. So AKS node group is creating, and you can see the resources is added. And if you go back to your AWS console, EKS cluster here, search for the EKS and click on enter. So this is the cluster that we created, EKS cloud. If you click on this one, you can see Kubernetes version is 1.28 and everything fine. You can see this is created 20 minutes ago. And if you click on compute, you will see our node group is created. You can see with the name of node cloud and desired size is 1. And you can see this is the active state now. So if you go back to your AWS console, you have to click on EC2. Otherwise you have to see the roles. Okay, so we created the roles, right? So you can see if you refresh this one, you will get the roles. Okay, so this is the node group cloud, and if you click on this one, we added the 3 attached policies, right? You can see these are the policies we attached: container register read only, CNI policy and worker node policy. And if you come back again, for the cluster cloud, we attached only one policy. You can see this is the EKS cluster policy we attached for our main cluster. Okay, so these are the roles we created, right? And our roles is created and our EKS cluster is created, and we have to see whether it's created our EC2 instance or not. Okay, so whenever the node group is created, it will create an EC2 instance, and you can see instance is running set to 1. If you click on this one, you will get this automatically. You can see it's running. So this is getting from our EKS cluster. Let me delete this one. Let's see whether it's creating again another instance or not. Let's click on instance, and I want to terminate this one. So because we provided the scaling config, right? If you delete this one, it has to automatically create another instance. Okay, you can see it's no matching instances found, and you can just refresh this one. You can see the time also here. So and you can see our time is 11:44 now, and you can see here, let me refresh this one, and you can see it's created another EC2 instance. If you click on the time, you can see at the 11:45 it's already created our another EC2 instance. Okay, so that is our scaling config is also working fine, and everything, even cluster is and everything is created. And you have to click on cloud cell here. So you have to click on, let me open it in a new tab. You have to click on here. So let's click on Windows in a new browser. Let's close it here. So our cloud cell will open in a new tab, and you have to click on close, and let me close this one, and it will create a cell, cloud cell. If you see here, if you provide the kubectl get nodes here, you will get the error. Okay, so because we didn't attach anything. Okay, so we need to provide the AWS EKS update config and everything. Okay, so this is the command we have to use. Okay, so let me paste that one. So you can see this is the command we have to use, AWS EKS update kube config. So in order to get your cluster info, so let's remove this one. We have to provide the name of your EKS cluster. Okay, so you can see this is the name of my cluster. Let's copy this one and come back to cloud cell, and let's remove the name, and you have to use this name. And for the region, you have to use AP-South 1. So we created the cluster in AP South 1, right? That's why you have to provide the region also, and you have to click on enter, and you can see it's added a new context. And if you see kubectl get nodes now, you will get the error definitely. So you can see it's cannot reaching to our API group. Okay, so you will get the error like this. Okay, so let's clear the screen, and you have to use this particular AWS configure here and enter, and you have to provide the same user credentials that you use it to create your or provision your Terraform. Okay, so let's copy this one, and this is the same access key I use it to create or provision my AWS EKS cluster. Okay, so that's why you have to save this one, but I am going to delete this one, right? So I'm not saving, that's why I opened the EC2 in another new tab. Okay, so let's use this one, copy that and come back to your AWS cloud cell here and paste that one and enter, and you have to provide your secret key also. Copy this one and go to cloud cell and paste it there and enter, and you have to use the default region we have used it to create AP South 1, right? So AP South 1 and JSON, and if you provide kubectl get nodes, you will get the output. Okay, you can see our one instance is up and running. So this is how you have to create an AWS EKS cluster using the Terraform. So if you want to delete the cluster, all you have to do is go back to here out to your VS code, and you have to provide the Terraform destroy -auto approve command to destroy everything. Okay, so if you click on enter, it will destroy everything. Okay, so it will take some time to destroy everything, and you can see it's deleting the first data we are getting. So it's first reading the data, and you can see it's starting deleting by providing the 8 to destroy. You can see our destruction is completed, 8 resources is completely destroyed. It's taken up to, you can see here, it's taking up to 6 minutes to delete your node group. To delete your cluster, it's taking 1 minute and 20 seconds. So totally it's taking 9 minutes to delete your complete complete cluster. Okay, and if you go back to your AWS console here, you can see we are getting the error, means our cluster is deleted. If you click on clusters and if you refresh this one, and you can see no clusters is found. Meanwhile, let me delete my key also. I don't, so let me delete this user also. Okay, so go back to users. So I don't want this one, so let's select this one and click on delete, and you have to provide your name and click on delete user. So and you can see our user is deleting. Okay, so that is done. So this is how you have to create your EKS cluster using the Terraform. I hope you understand everything clearly and you learned something new from this particular video, and thanks for watching the video and keep on supporting.